Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My guest this week is Bryan Nicol, the founder of Freedom Financial Planning, a virtual independent financial planning practice based in Cape Town, South Africa. His firm serves high-earning professionals who are striving to make work optional within 10 or so years. Now, this episode is about a topic that doesn't always get framed as marketing, but I would argue it absolutely is. We are talking about your prospect filtering system. Now, Bryan commented on one of my LinkedIn posts about close rates and your prospect process, and he shared that his close rate with the people who actually schedule a meeting with him is really, really high. And one of the reasons for that is because he has a really great prospect filtering process, which means that the people who actually get on his calendar are the right fits for him, and he's usually the right fit for them. So in this episode, he's walking us through how he went from a really chaotic day of back-to-back unqualified prospect calls. We're talking 7 prospect calls in a single day after returning from vacation, which was the moment that he realized he needed to build a multi-stage intake process that filters prospects on both the numbers they're coming in with and the fit long before the meeting ever gets scheduled. He shares how that process has evolved over time, what questions he asks of prospects and why, and what happened when he made one exception to his own system and skipped a step for a warm referral. And I'll just give you a little bit of a spoiler. It did not go as planned. So what I love about this conversation is that Bryan is connecting the dots between his filtering system when people actually find him and his content marketing. Because when you're crystal clear on who your ideal client is, your content naturally starts speaking directly to them and does a lot of the filtering work for you beforehand. And that over time is what fills your pipeline with the right people. So if you have ever felt like you're spending way too much time on prospect calls that go nowhere, or people are showing up not ready for your level of service, and you're not quite sure how to build a process that protects your time without turning good leads away, this episode will give you a nice, practical, and actionable framework to work from. So without further ado, let's dive in. Bryan, thank you so much for joining me today on the Finance Marketing Podcast. I know that it's quite a bit later for you in your part of the world than it is for me here, so I really appreciate you being here. I wanted to start off with kind of a big question for you. So you believe very strongly in filtering prospects out or in before they get on a call with you. You want to make sure that anyone who gets on your calendar is it going to be a good fit for you? Can you take me back to when you first started to realize that this was important? What was happening that made you realize this?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Hillary. Firstly, it's a privilege to be here. I really appreciate it. When it came to trying to filter prospects, I learned the hard way. So what happened was, the first time it really hurt me when I had too many prospects lined up was I think it was about 2 or so weeks annual vacation. And then my calendar was booked off for those 2 weeks. And I had a link available to people to book. I use Calendly a lot. And so then they would, like on the site or wherever my social media presence was, people could click through. So now I was away from the office for like 2.5 weeks. And the first day I got back, I went on, I think what you call a safari. Like we go every year to the bush and we check the animals out and everything. And you come back from 2 weeks from that and you're just kind of floating. And the first day I got back, I remember I think it was like a Thursday or a Wednesday. I had 7 prospect calls in one day.
Oh.
And what happened was I was just getting like a lot of referrals or whatever. And people were clicking onto my website and my social media channels. And they were clicking through to Calendly and they were just booking calls. And they've booked out every single spot in that day. And then the next day they booked out like 4 or 5. And I remember it's like an 8, 9 hour day. And I couldn't, like, at some point in time, I couldn't even go to the bathroom. So I just had to go through and, like, I don't know. I think you know what it's like when you meet someone for the first time and it's a prospect. You've got to, like, it's the most important call in the day. That's the most important person in the world. And so I was broken afterwards, and I couldn't get myself to be excited about the next prospect call. But even though it's such a blessing to have so many people knocking on your door. And then I realized after that day, I kind of took stock looking at my diary and all the people I met. And I realized, you know what, I met with 8 people today. 4 are worth, like, meeting again. Like, we can add value to them. They can afford our services, I suspect, and let's go forward with them. So I wasted half of the day meeting with people that should not have met with me. And it's not just about me, but it's also about them. Like, it was wasting their time meeting with me, whereas I could have upstream, got hold of them and said, oh, this is not right, but I've got a list of people you should really be talking to. And so it was kind of after that experience where I felt like running away, running away back to the bush. And I was like, okay, I've got to be clever about this, because now, if you're getting traction and maybe you're getting referrals and all of that, you can't just give your time away to everybody. You've got to be careful. And so it was kind of around that point, that was the cherry on the top. And I thought, okay, fine. Let me get a little bit more professional about this.
It's interesting that you realized this after you came back from a vacation. It sounds like perhaps this was already happening beforehand, but because all the meetings weren't scheduled back to back on the very same day, it would have been harder to maybe realize that it was happening. Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah, it's actually quite an astute, astute observation, because what I was doing was I was probably having about 6 or 7 prospects a week. And, I just started my firm in 2023 in March, Freedom Financial Planning. And what happened was I started from basically ground zero, like scratch. There was nothing there, no clients or whatever. And I was kind of taking meetings with anyone and everyone, and we were growing at a hell of a pace. So we were onboarding some months 6 new families, and other months 4 or 5. And so I was having a lot of prospect calls. I was having a lot of them go through to the end and sign us up, but I wasn't being too discerning. And when I look back at my calendar after that vacation, I realized that because I have a color coded calendar, and a prospect call is gold in the calendar. I just saw like this golden thread, which is great, but it was everywhere, and there were so many of them. And I thought, that's not really right, because the ROI, so the amount of them that were becoming profitable clients, was at that stage probably like 40-50%. And so I needed to somehow get ahead of it and prevent that from happening again.
So what do you do when you realize you're getting calls, which, like you said, is a blessing, but half those calls either they can't afford your services, perhaps they have problems that you either can't or don't want to help with. You have a very specialized niche that you love to help. What do you do about that? What have you tried?
A few things that worked and a few things that didn't, but also what it did force me to do. And you mentioned the word, in South Africa, we pronounce it niche. So
Oh, I
niche.
often pronounce it niche as well. I never know.
Oh, really? Okay. So I think Cole Richards and Kitzes, they kind of like both each have a different way of saying it as well on their podcast.
Hmm.
But so it forced me, it does force you. And if you have that kind of problem of abundance, so to speak, then it forces you to be selective. And it made me think really long and hard about who we want to serve and why, and what we're actually all about. So it was a good thing, because it forced me to become a real business owner, and to start guarding my time and being very protective and jealous over it. And so what I initially did, which was kind of made me, how can I say, it took a lot of guts for me, was to say, I'm going to put something between me and the prospect, and I'm not going to allow them just to book in my calendar. So because now, it's a newish business and it's growing, and you don't want to like tell people, oh, I'm making it difficult for you to get hold of me. But
Right.
what I did was I put in my first iteration of a kind of a questionnaire, and I used Calendly for it. And Calendly at the time, I don't think it had those routing options like in 2023 where you can filter someone in Calendly and it can already say, oh, you can't really meet with this person because the questions didn't line up with what we wanted. But the problem was that, unfortunately, my definition of an ideal client was still like a mile wide. So I was still kind of, let me exclude some people, but I need to include everyone else just in case. There's money on the table, that type of thing. And so that was my first iteration, was a bit of a form on Calendly. And also what happened was people were booking, and then I would review the answers to the questions and say, and I would have to kind of quickly email them back. So it was all manual and say, oh, I saw you applied for a meeting. That's awesome. Look, I'm going to have to be diplomatic about this, but you're not really an ideal fit. And then I just started thinking, like, why don't I just kind of start telling them what an ideal fit is? And started having more questions and statements in the online forms. And so the online form started evolving over time. That was before I did anything in marketing. So before a podcast, social media, LinkedIn, it was just on a website or wherever there was a button, organize a meeting here. So it changed to request a meeting or apply for a consultation or something. And then the questions became a bit more detailed and a bit more targeted. And even right now, this week, I had a meeting with my strength coach, and not the gym, like the Gallup Clifton Strengths, like the Gallup Institute, their research in there. So I got a coach who helps me with that. And we're going to even include more questions now and reduce and remove some other ones to make sure that now going from purely quantitative questions, where it was like demographic, like age, or what age band do you fit in, to kind of like be, how can I say, politically correct about it. And then revenue, income as a household, or their balance sheet, that type of thing. Then it started evolving. Now it started evolving to qualitative issues as well, and just to try and get ahead of, once again, to refine that list. So the upfront kind of list is important. I think it's important to have a list of questions, a form of some sort, Calendly or whatever. I use MS Forms now, and just to have it to reduce, to filter. And it doesn't allow them to book a meeting. It gets through to us, and then we can screen it. And then we can say yes or no. And we've got templated replies to clients who we either say yes or no to take the process forward.
Are you willing to share, if you remember, what some of those early questions were, kind of tactically, and maybe how those have changed?
Yeah, no problem. So initially, I didn't really have an ideal client, but I thought it would be younger people. So I'm not young anymore, but when I was younger, I thought, I want to deal with people in their 30s and all of that. And so, and my business model allows it. So we don't work on an assets under management basis. We charge a fee for our service. So it was more about like, if you earn enough to pay us, as opposed to just if you had enough invested assets to pay us. So what I was doing was asking kind of very almost cold questions, like your age, but it was in the band. And then it was income, just general income for the household. And just in general, your like balance sheet for the household. And I gave a definition of what it looks like. So if you have a business or properties or investment properties, and then yes, investment accounts, retirement funds and all of that. It was just basic. It was like 3 or so questions. Then that kind of started working well enough because I could see people, some people were like, it's their first job ever and reaching out to us. And pretty quickly, I got rid of that tier of service offering, like an entry-level service offering. We got rid of it. We got fully subscribed within a few months. So we got rid of that. And then I started changing the questions and evolving over time to say, are you like 30 or under? And that was, for me, a cutoff. Like, we're probably not going to be ideal for you. Or are you 70 or 75 plus? That type of thing. And so I was kind of starting to, from the top and the bottom, reduce the amount of people I could potentially meet with as prospects based purely on age, which is probably ageist, but at the same time, I knew kind of who I kind of wanted to work with, people who I still had opportunity to influence in their lives, not people who were maybe in the sunset of their lives. And also because of, once again, the way we charge, if you're a high earning young professional, I didn't feel the need to go after people who had assets, so to speak, so they could kind of fund my business. So it opened the gates for me. And then over time, I started asking other questions like, do you love to travel? Where do you want to go to? Where you haven't been to in the world before? That is because I kind of analyzed all of our clients, our demographics, all of their interests. Are they employed, self-employed, and travel? I saw it. Everybody loves to travel. All of the clients love to travel, and we love to travel. Everyone in the business loves to travel. And so I just realized that we love helping people plan for vacations. And so we spend a lot of time actually planning for that and putting money aside and funding vacations. So I just thought, okay, well, let's work with people who are like us, So travel was important. And the people who were like, no, I hate traveling. Ugh, I hate foreigners or whatever. It's like, okay, well, we're not going to work well together. So there was a lot of like, people say, no, I don't like traveling. It's like, oh, we're not going to be so good together. I'm sorry. But there's these great advisors you should work with, So it started narrowing down, and now it's quite a bit more narrow, because we now understand who we want to work with. It's 10 people who are about 10 years away from being work optional. So it's probably 45-year-olds and up. And it's higher earning professionals who generally are employed. They're probably compensated with like equity, like stock options, as you might refer to it, as we call it, like RSUs or shares and that type of thing. Getting well paid. They love a good life, a balanced life, a life of joy and fulfillment. But the last thing they want to do is to be beholden to work for the rest of their lives. They want the option, to express that option of, I do or don't want to work anymore, and it's my choice. And so I found, once again, being a spreadsheet guy, I went through the clients and I realized most of the ones we find the most joy with working with, and also profitable, they were in that kind of 40 to 50-ish bracket. And it was like, we need to make some good decisions between now and the time that we decide to call it quits. And if we want to know if we can. So then it was like, okay, fine. That becomes part of the questions. So how far are you away from making work optional, do you think? Or the age thing became more important. So last year we stopped taking on anyone who's under 35. So we have people that contact us who they earn exceptionally well. And they've built up successful businesses, even in like software or whatever, AI. But we've excluded them just because 35 under. We make a rule. We can't be hypocrites. We have to stick to the rule. And so we just exclude them and we refer them out. And clients were too old. And, there's a lot of money you can make there, but I don't think there would be a hell of a lot of fulfillment for us. And so we've compressed the band now, and we kind of operate in that demographic, like 45 to retirement. And that's it. That's kind of it really as a new client.
I love how through this process you've done a couple of things, as your firm is not that old, right? You're still relatively new firm, but you've done such great work in figuring out who your ideal clients are and how you're going to filter just for them. You mentioned that when you first started this process and you had the questions on your Calendly form, it was maybe 3 questions, maybe 4 questions. How many questions is it now?
Ooh, I can actually check, but I think it's about 7 or 8.
7 or 8
And
questions.
7 or 8 questions, but some of them they have to kind of think. So we tell them just roughly the size of your estate, and that's also very vague. And a lot of people don't actually know. So successful people, whatever, they don't actually know what it comes to, what it amounts to. But that's why after the initial meeting, we have another filtration process we go through. So to further protect us from the second meeting, which we call a follow-up call, but you could call it like a pitch meeting where you've heard them, you've asked a lot of good questions, you've gone back to the drawing board, you've thought about their situation, how you might approach it, try and demonstrate some of the value you can add, price the services, and then present that to them. And so that's our second meeting. And then in between the first and second meeting, there's another process they go through to once again give us the information we need to determine if they're suitable or not. And then after that step, we still sometimes have to filter people out because the questions initially are still relatively vague-ish in the sense that, broadly speaking, your estate is, we give bands and we say your estate is between, in our currency, let's just say under 10 million rand, which for you is like a Starbucks coffee. And then above that, it's like, 10 million to 15 and 15 to 20 or whatever. But now, what does that consist of? Is that just your primary house, your residence, and you just happen to live in a mansion with no money? Because that can be misleading. So we go into further detail thereafter. Once again, not granular, but we will get information from them. We collect it via asset map, and then they will follow a link. They will give us the information we need. And that is the final qualifier. Then we go into the pitch meeting, the final meeting with the prospect. So we have 2 prospect meetings, each of 45 minutes. The one is they just talk the whole time. We just ask questions. Then in between, they click a link, they go to asset map, they give us the information we need, and we tell them round numbers, but I now want to see parts. Like just give me parts. Like I just want to see parts. Employer retirement fund. I've got this individual pension. I've got a tax-free investment or ETF or whatever. Just show me parts. And then from there, once with asset map, you can program it. So once they click submit, it will take them immediately to our Calendly for the follow-up call, and then they can click on that, and then they book the follow-up call. And that's always going to give a buffer of 2 weeks. So it gives us 2 weeks. So on a Monday and Friday, I'll generally try and do admin. And then so they do it on a Wednesday. On the Friday, I'll get around to looking at that application now, and I'll look at their asset map, and I'll be like, oh, I thought I picked this up in the meeting. They don't actually have what they said they have, or they don't have enough to warrant our fee, to be honest. And that's another thing. We won't do business with people who we can't justify charging that fee for. So we just refer them out. And so then I might send a mail back, and then I'll say, look here, and it's pre-templated. I hope it's nicely worded. And we just said, look, we don't feel like we could charge you this, but it won't be fair because we're charging other clients the same, and they've got a lot more going on. So, I hope you understand. And then we give them the details of other advisors. So that final prospect call, we generally meet up with people that we're probably gonna sign up. Like it's so rare for us to not close at that point. So when we don't, it's kind of like, wow, did not see that coming. However, I will say, we interacted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, and then you reached out and said, let's have a chat. And it was after that, it was last week actually, that we did have someone who came back and said, oh, you know what, your fee is a little bit rich for my blood. I'm sorry, like I'll get back to you if I can afford it one day. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, now I'm going on this podcast as a fraud because I mentioned it's like almost flawless record. But you see, this is the thing. And this is what's important for other advisors to understand, because I've seen where this goes wrong. You've got to control the narrative with a prospect from the first opportunity they ever reach out to you. Well, the first time they see you, there's got to be a way that you funnel them into your process. That's how I've kind of worked it out painfully. And when someone circumvents a step of that process somehow, it just goes it goes awry. Things don't work out. And that's why you always go back to your process and the funnel that you've created. And so this example was someone who was referred to us by a near and dear client of ours, who's referred many clients before, who've all signed up with our services. And it was kind of, they reached out, or our client reached out and said, please, and CC'd the client, her friend in, and said, can you just meet with my friend? She's great, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to put them through the ringer, and make them fill out information, because there's a very warm intro, and I'm very happy to meet with someone for 45 minutes. Maybe just help solve a problem. They don't need me. They went through all of that. They missed out the first initial process we've got with the form, the Calendly link. Even the Calendly link says certain things that I want everyone to see before they meet us. They didn't go through that. And then expectations just weren't 100% managed, and there was a mismatch. And then I thought to myself, oh, I wasted her time, I wasted my time. But then I thought back to in my career, and that was just normal. And we've kind of become like privileged now in a position where we've been able to work it out so well that we know that when we get to that final stage, it's almost a done deal in that respect. And so that's why I value the process that we've developed, because it does save us a heck of a lot of time.
What a great example. I'm so glad that happened in between us chatting on LinkedIn, because that's just such a great example of how powerful this system really is that you've created. I was going to ask you, have there been any, and maybe there have over the years, have there been any unintended downsides to this filtering system that you've gone through, or do you feel like it's all mostly been upsides?
It's mostly been upsides. I think a lot of the downsides might be missed opportunities, but at the same time, I wouldn't know about them. So it's kind of potentially an opportunity cost, like a phantom opportunity cost or a mystery opportunity cost. But I will say that when you practice discernment in financial advice, it's foreign to a lot of people because they're used to advisors, the cliche, I'll deal with anyone that fogs up a mirror. And when you start adding hurdles and also waiting periods, like we have waiting periods often, like 3 months, you add those kind of tension in that, and somehow people just feel that they really should be working with you. And then when you meet with them, even the first time, and they go through our process and they give us the information thereafter, and then we disqualify them on that basis, they get kind of angry sometimes, and they'll send a mail and saying, "How dare you? Like I really want to work with you guys. I'm happy to pay that fee." And I'll say, "Cheapers, I don't know if I can add value beyond our fee in the first couple of years, to be honest. Like, I don't think so. I know that in 20, 30 years, but there's other families. There's only so many seats on our bus. There's only so many people we can serve, and so I tend to find that sometimes people think like, "Who do you think you are?" by saying no to us. So that's the one thing. And the second thing is, it's the downside is maybe getting a little bit of flack also from people who clearly would never work with us because we are 100% virtual. And so we've had on social media, on YouTube, we have a podcast, and we also are active on some personal finance forums, and people reach out to us and they'll say, "Here's my number. Can you please call me on my cell phone, my mobile?" And then I'll just say, like, "Thank you very much for reaching out. We generally are super busy." So I'll say, let's just rather maybe, have a discussion about whatever your concern is, or your issue, or your financial troubles that you're having. So here's a link, and it's to the form. And then they will say, "No, just call me." And then I'll say, "No, please, here's a link to the form." And what happens then is, like, what happened twice before, and it was both actually like females who I think were quite a bit older than me, but culturally quite different. So I won't go into the details in South Africa, but we're very diverse. And I think in their culture, like, I'm a younger male and I must just pick up the phone and call them now, and I don't know them from afar. So I just, like I said, very politely, like, "No, please just follow this link, and, we've got a process." They said, "You would have got business out of me. I've watched your videos or whatever, and you could have made some sales. And so now you're lost." And I was like, I don't sell policies, but yeah, it's like, okay, cool. But that's a filtering process. That's part of it. Like, they were gone upstream. They were removed, but they would never work with us. People want to meet with us. We send them a link. Our clients want to meet with us. We plan our annual planning meetings 3 months in advance. We give them a link to our calendar for 3 months' time. That's how we work. It's virtual. It's tech savvy, and so it's kind of a way of just removing it. So there have been potential kind of like, "Oh, did I make the right call there?" But I think the upside is far outweighs any potential downside.
I would agree with you. And I'm so glad that you're saying this on the podcast because I think it's important for advisors who do implement these systems to stick to the systems because, you saw very recently that when you don't stick to the system, time ends up being wasted on both sides, and nobody wants to waste their time or anyone else's time. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. Now, the other thing that I think is really neat about the system that you've built is now that you have the podcast and YouTube and LinkedIn and social media, now you really know who it is that you are filtering for. And so you can create content that speaks directly to that audience. And so that over time, the only people who are really going to come into the form are more likely to be that right fit client. Have you seen that play out yet?
Yes, definitely, especially with content creation. So I started in earnest in January last year, the first time I ever created content, and I was on LinkedIn. And then probably September, October last year, I started creating videos on YouTube. So I have secured the services of a marketing person, and they kind of help us create that. And it's it's amazing because you speak on a topic that you speak to your clients about often, and it's a problem you're generally very good at solving. And like you're doing right now, you're just elevating that now. So you're doing it, and you just do that. You talk through it for half an hour with your colleague or maybe a guest. And then afterwards, people say, yeah, that's me. I need to speak to you because I had the same issue. And so 2 weeks ago, we released, or a week and a few days ago, we released the latest episode on our podcast. It's the vanity metrics are very poor. It's probably like, that episode's probably got something like 400 or 500 views. I don't know. But out of that, I've already had 2 meetings, and I've got another one set up for next week with ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals who are saying, yes, thank you. You just explained my life. It's chaos. I've got 2 different financial or wealth management firms helping me. I've got stuff in this complicated product and that complicated product, and I just want a simple life. And what you described there, it made perfect sense to me. But what I described there is something that I've mentioned many times in meetings with clients before, where we talk about our advice to rationalize their financial affairs and to give them clarity. So it's not difficult, really. It's just the effort and money. It does cost money. It can cost money. But I think advisors, we generally are super impatient. Like, we want an ROI immediately. It's like so hypocritical. But then we tell people, leave your money in the markets for 10 years and then, you'll see something. When we pay someone a retainer to do our marketing for us, and it's equivalent to like someone's salary, and we say it's been 2 months, like, yeah, I haven't made sales, it's well, give it time. So it's a slow burn, but then after a while, we found that people were sharing it. The analysis on the social media these days, that the data is very good, and you can see kind of what people are doing with it, and then you just follow that and you say, okay, cool, that worked, and I wonder why. Look at the ingredients. Even ask AI, like, analyze this episode. Why did it do so well? And it's like, oh, you did this, you did that. Okay, let's do more of this and that. So it's not rocket science, and the return on investment is great because you start, as long as you, I think, have the courage to say we want to work with these people. But it's not actually that. It's more like we don't want to work with those people. That's kind of the part where you need courage, because you have to abandon that kind of scarcity mindset and say, I'm going to go all in on this. And this is still millions of people in your country, probably. So it's more than enough to keep your firm going.
Bryan, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you think would be pertinent for other advisors to hear? If you could give them, one little piece of advice.
One little piece of advice. Do that. I would say, when it comes to trying to filter people out, or even if maybe, let me start the other side of it. A lot of people aren't getting prospects. They're not getting people coming to them. They're not getting people knocking on their door. The nice thing is with AI is, if you record your calls, even if you meet in person, you can ask their permission and record it on an AI note taker. Just analyze that call and just even ask AI to tell you what are the 2 or 3 major points of that call, and look for a trend with your clients, the clients that you're happy serving. And that just creates content. And then you can go from there and then add your own original thoughts and your own genuine feelings and your own, your Bryanisms, your Hillaryisms into it, and your humor or whatever, and just produce that. And even if you write something, and don't look at the vanity kind of data, the likes, the shares, the subscriptions. Just do it for a few months, do it for a year. You are content. That's what I always think. We are content. Like, we do this that people know nothing about and think it's foreign. Just put that out into the world. You do it in front of clients all day long. And don't be afraid to. I was the other day in a call with colleagues of mine. It was like 20 or 30 of them. And some of the local finfluencers were really peeving them off because they were saying things that were like a bit dodgy and sketchy. And they were moaning and moaning. And I just messaged them and I said, I hope you're paying your rent for all the space they're occupying in your minds. And they weren't really happy with that. And some of them DM'd me and said, dude, so I said, no, you moan about these 2 or 3 influencers every week, but you don't create any content. You don't market for yourself. I don't know your business exists excepting that we're on a WhatsApp group together. you're given content everywhere. Even if you're going after the people the finfluencers are going after, the finfluencers are giving you content with their erroneous comments, their erroneous posts. Say, okay, cool, this person said this, let me correct it for you, I am Bryan Nicol, I work at Freedom Financial Planning, reach out. Like, it's so easy, but I think a lot of people are afraid of being vulnerable and afraid of the work. And some of the more established firms are afraid of the cost and the cost of marketing help. And so it's a very long answer. But my answer, my kind of in a nutshell is to say, just think of the value you add to clients and try and bring that across to people, because it's really valuable to people that don't understand the finance world. And if we're solving problems with people in real life, we can elevate that and produce case studies. We can show people what it's like and just do it all the time.
That's such a wonderful answer, Bryan. I have to give a shameless little plug for my newsletter, because it just really speaks to why I've branded my newsletter the way it is. I've branded my newsletter as show up anyway. Even if you don't feel ready, you're offering value behind the scenes to your clients. You can offer value in front of the scenes to other people who are like your clients. And I really
Yeah.
love this notion of kind of working against the finfluencers who we know are not giving the most accurate information. I hear advisors talk about it all the time. So that's such a great example. Bryan, if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, where are the best places for them to do that?
Thank you. So firstly, LinkedIn. So it's Bryan Nicol, BryanNicol. Not any of the ones in the US. I'm very much in South Africa. And then my website is busy being redone. In fact, I got the first two kind of options or drafts today, so I'm very excited. I haven't had a new website since I launched the business. It's going to look a lot more like something I'm proud to show people. So by the time this goes out, I'm not sure when it will, but hopefully that website will be published. And on there are options to contact me. And also, I am on Instagram under my name, and LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. So we've got a podcast called the Enough Club. What it means is you have enough to know that you're going to be okay in life. You have enough to know that you can stop working. And so the podcast is orientated towards consumers who just want to know, what are we doing to help people get there, and they can apply that in their own lives. And so there as well, there's our contact details. It's one of those info at kind of email addresses, but in any of those places. But LinkedIn DMs, I'm happy to reply to whomever and learn as well from them.
Wonderful. Well, I'll link to all of that in the show notes. I love the name of your podcast, by the way, the Enough Club. I'm excited to go listen to that. So thank you, Bryan, so much for coming on and sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Hillary. I really appreciate you reaching out.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.